Hi, it's Bloody Mary, and it's that time again. We are going to dig deep inside the old homestead of Marie Laveau with her spirit at our side. And today's extra spirit will be Mary Onieda Toups, the witch queen of New Orleans meets the voodoo queen of New Orleans, though I'm sure they've met spirits before, with me, Bloody Mary, and our special occultist guest, Edwin. Please stay tuned for the mid-break for our spell time, for this is a long interview, but it's worth it. Greetings, it's the Bloody Mary Show here in New Orleans, and today's subject will be the occult New Orleans, old and new, with our very special guest. State your name and title if you have one or two or three or four.
Oh no, I'm just simple. I am Edwin.
Edwin has studied many paths of the occult and magic and mysticism and religion, correct?
For almost 60 years now.
And you never have landed on just one, have you?
No, because
Why?
wisdom is
Why,
everywhere.
anyway?
No, it's a smorgasbord. Wisdom is a delight, and you should partake of it.
Well, that's not politically correct these days.
Well, no, if you stick on one thing, I think you really stagnate. You have to blossom. You can have a mainstay, and that mainstay can be whatever discipline you're most interested in, but you do need a tangent knowledge of everything around you.
Now, this is the house or the cottage. This was the cottage of Voodoo Queen Marie Laveau. This was an occult hotbed. And she was born here and died here. Her grandmother was here. Her mother was here. And it was very mixed even in her day. And it continues to this day to be so. But people are now, screaming and hollering, especially from the rest of the country, that no, you're not allowed. It's a closed practice. White people can't do voodoo. I said it's several hundred years too late because that's the way it has been. And it's not to dishonor. Most religions, all religions have all different colors and cultures of people in it. So this is a strange new way of expressing the anger and over racism, which shouldn't have to be fought through religion.
Because the basis of voodoo was indigenous African religions blended with Roman Catholic Catholicism.
And the shaman, Native American.
And New Orleans was always a very Catholic city.
Oh, yeah. And Native American. Everybody forgets their influence, and it was very important.
The Native Americans were at the French market selling their wares up until the early 1900s. Mm-hmm. They walked around. It's still
and they stayed here. Marie Laveau is always, there's no blood test, but I've always said to be part Native American, and they say she had 10, 20 staying on the property, so they didn't have to take the boat back across the lake because they'd be the ones that were selling the herbs down on a river.
And her family had deep roots in New Orleans.
Oh yeah. Absolutely. What
wisdom goes in, and you wish to emanate your wisdom out.
And it's like continued education anyway.
Yes, it's always.
It's interesting and fascinating to see how one culture interprets the same type of thing and how they go about trying to achieve it. So it's very sad these days when people are trying to say, no, you have to be born into something in order to study it, and if not, you're culturally appropriating it. But as you mentioned in conversations, in the 1970s, occult world in New Orleans, Cabala was very big.
Oh, it was an undercurrent in the city.
And now, if you're not Jewish, you're not supposed to even look at it. So it's kind of too late because it's been put into all the different
New Orleans back in the 60s and 70s, the world had not really been exposed to so much jet travel. And we had a more intense culture here.
But we were just a port town too.
And our culture was always very religious and very spiritual.
And very drunk.
But then that also leads you to a different state of consciousness. Mm-hmm. We were a happy people. Bourbon Street was a joy invented for the residents of New Orleans.
Right, it wasn't nearly as tourist. I mean, there might have been a few artists.
We had tourists, but it was for us.
I saw I saw some of the main monsignors and priests drinking all through the night into the wee hours of the morning.
Oh,
Those crazy guys with the signs up and down Bourbon Street like we do now, telling you you're going to burn and die in hell for being on bourbon and going to Mardi Gras.
Part of when the magic was still within religion. People hadn't grown, what's the right word to use? Tired of faith.
Questioning. They weren't questioning.
Now people are just going, oh, it's about me. I don't need to go outside of me. And they're losing so much of what they are a part of.
Well, that's sad. And plus the instant gratification of every answer being at your fingertips through Google and the like, which of course is only skimming the surface of what reality is.
And many people don't read beyond either the headline, the opening lead, or the first paragraph.
Newspaper, man.
But it's not like it was when everybody read books. You went to the library to look something up. Now
source
you
material
just go to
too.
Google and you say, okay, tell me the magic answer.
That's enough. All I need to know is that one sentence.
And that's it. And you don't know the veracity of that answer. Where did that information come from? Who looked down and they go, this is where this person got this from.
Oh, I always look down.
Now, well, you're smarter than most. And you then say, well, let me now go look at that site itself or that book and see what that information has.
The source material is very, and hands-on knowledge too. There's a point you also have to stop reading and do.
Well, you have to do. You always have to do. If you only have an intellectual understanding of somebody or something, and then you go, oh, that's nice. But if you never sit down and actually say, I'm not going to relax and meditate and reach some point within yourself, all you can say is, oh, sure, I meditate all the time. Yeah. And it is an art. You have to do it. It's just like when you want to give an expression of, I know something's going on. I have that innate feeling that I should not do this or I should do this. The more you respond to your inner self, the more your inner self becomes responsive to you.
And the more you trust yourself.
Yes, you have to
trust yourself.
You have to say, I will do it or I won't do it because that's what my thought is.
Or intuition.
Yeah. Presto, the book opens more within you.
It's always going back when you were young.
Going back when I was young and remembering what it was like sitting in different places, and in particular my own shop on St. Philip Street, reading tarot cards and consulting with people and just enjoying the flux of life daily in New Orleans. I said, well, you know, my next door neighbor at one time, and she was kind of my mentor who helped me get into this, was Marie Onieda Toups.
Who's become recently re-famous.
Always famous within my eyes.
Well, yes, in the locals' eyes. But.
Yes, and she was a very powerful woman, a very spiritual woman. People know her as the Witch Queen of New Orleans. But I knew her as a friend for several years. And when she closed her shop, I opened
the Witch's Closet, was that it?
The Witch's Workshop.
Workshop, okay.
I opened a shop right next door. And many of the items I started off with were items that Onieda had that she then gave to me.
Gotcha.
I offered certain remuneration, of course. And unfortunately, Hurricane Katrina came along in 2005, and my house had 6 feet of water in it, and I lost everything. Well, I thought I did lose everything, but I found today, while looking through a box I had not unpacked, a few little mementos of something that I had gotten from Onieda. And it would be nice to show you these, and perhaps you could just put them in your shop.
In the museum.
As an item from a very famous person.
And she got really famous because of, American Horror
And I
Story.
remember exactly what they are, and I found these.
Oh, so oils that she made?
After the floodwaters, and they've been in there since the early 1970s.
So
occasionally I opened these and did something, but I think in the late 80s,
see a little leakage.
I just left them alone, and it's difficult to see what they are.
Are these oils that she made?
Yes. One of that says, what kind of oil?
Let's see, you're asking my eyes to be better than yours. It could be Loban oil. It's spell time. We mentioned Loban oil, also known as benzoin, also known as styrax, and it is used to cleanse and powerful for removing anything evil or negative that's around you. It cleanses the mind and helps you focus and concentrate. Burn it, wear it, anoint with it. It'll make your home feel cleansed and peaceful, and it smells good. You might want to get yourself some bergamot, too. That was Marie Laveau's favorite. Also in Anieda's bag here. Bergamot will help restore balance and remove stress. It's great to have it around. According to newspaper source, dated September 1st, 1970, Anieda's Witchcraft Shop, Occult and Voodoo Supplies. Mary Onieda Toups, 521 St. Philip Street.
Yes, you can open it up. You're very welcome to open it up. But
it kind of looked like Loban. Loban is a common magical oil. Traditional magic oil, maybe.
And there's her bergamot oil with her own typing on it.
Literal typing.
Real typing.
Typewriter typing.
That many people today would not know how to use a typewriter. So when I found these, I said,
well, cool. Well, thank you
what
very
an
much.
amazing find.
Very, what's the word? Historic, but also, not fermented.
No.
But patinaed. I don't know what
So these have been in my possession.
And put a little string that says Onieda Toups, which is Workshop 1971 or 2. I know later it was called the Witch's Closet when it was still on St. Philip.
That was a different incarnation of it.
He still seemed to have her charter.
Yes. And this, after
I got that picture up in my museum.
And picture I found in the Historic New Orleans Collection database of the shop.
And what does it say?
It says Witch's Workshop.
This is not when you were on the one next door.
I'm right next door over there.
And you were.
And that's a little bit.
The Occult, just the Occult shop.
Just the Occult shop.
Basic, good name.
And have you seen the interior photo?
I've been in it in the 70s.
No, this is her in the shop.
Okay. As I said, I've been in that shop when it was open, when she was there. I was very young. In fact, you may have been the one that told me to go there.
And I love her little sign up here.
What does it say? Yours is...
Your giggle
is
your ignorance.
And it has all the typical good pokeberry, good to get rid of a curse, hyssop, and all these other things on the wall. I remember going in there, I must have been 12.
You were a young person back then. I'm a few years older than you.
Yes, and you gave me my first tarot reading. I think you told me about her shop. And I had a good friend whose mother had an artist shop down the corner. So I came down to visit her, and we walked around all the time. And I remember going there and having the police pull me over when I got out and start questioning me. And they were like, be careful going into places like that. You're a local, and I'm like, I'm fine. And they're like, you be careful, you might disappear. And then, and they said something about there, and they say, what else did they say that in retrospect was so funny? It's like, they kidnap young, pretty girls, like,
they can tell all sorts of crap.
Do things with you. And I'm like, all right, and then they said, and don't go to that Krishna temple. That's even worse. I was just like, okay, whatever. And all the people now was like, oh, she was so powerful and she was so this, that the police never even looked her way. Bullshit. They were watching the front door.
Time. Back in the 60s and 70s, they watched everything.
Not that she did anything officially illegal.
No, nothing was illegal. And after she closed her storefront shop, where she continued rituals.
So the little tiny basement, our version of a New Orleans basement, which is above ground.
It was just a very small, tiny little room with a little kitchen, a little bathroom, and there she would perform rituals for people who had over time become her special friends or clients.
In the movie, And she always did them at Pop's Fountain. It's like, why would she go to Pop's Fountain when families were all around at the time? It wasn't desolate like it is now. It was family. There's 10,000 other trees to go to.
Well, it's just like things. You can have some group that just goes out and says, let's go out to the lakefront, let's go to...
Sure.
But you're not going to really do your actual ritual just out there in this desolate area in a residential neighborhood where the neighbors at some point are going to complain about you.
Say something, yeah.
No,
you got your own stuff in the forest, that's fine.
You're going to do it in the French Quarter behind high walls where you have your privacy.
Well, I mean, there's
a
point to having the trees and the water as your allies, and the rituals too, public rituals.
Patios have trees and water, but they don't have snoopy people coming by and interrupt
that's questionable. There's tourists everywhere now.
Yes.
But there weren't the tourists that much back then.
Mysticism and witchcraft and the occult, high and low, permeated the French Quarter, the riverfront, and Decatur, and St. Philip and Ursuline streets were the hotbed of it. You could just walk by, and the foundations for my life were right there.
What about, well, I know certain things, and I want your opinion on where voodoo came in the 1970s in the occult mix of New Orleans.
Well, it never left New Orleans.
No, I know, but I mean, how did it meet
come
with the white people stuff?
The white people, interestingly, there was always, I won't say a significant portion of white people, but there were always Caucasians who appreciated the African Caribbean religious nature,
and
the deep spirituality of it, and they were known all through the 1800s of partaking in these voodoo
but
rituals.
But still in 1970s.
In the
historically
1970s,
1700s, 1800s. Marie Laveau, right here in this house.
In the 1970s, 60s to 70s, and up into the 80s as things were blossoming on through, in the African American community, it was waning. It was just going back to traditional Catholicism. Many people were then becoming Baptists,
and they were
Jehovah's Witnesses,
told it was evil.
Many different, varieties of Christianity.
Well, my whole point was it was mixed always.
And it was always mixed. New Orleans has always been a homogeneous atmosphere for people. You always had a lot going on. And so
that's something that people are arguing today. It's like, no, what I'm doing is not new. I was passed down, and other people were passed down. It was always mixed, even in this house. We're in the house of Voodoo Queen
I
Marie
guess
Laveau.
in a way you could say, in the storefront viewpoint of, here I am, I want to do this, the African population, they had to be more reserved than the Caucasian population. It's not to say it's a total racist thing, but yes, racism does come into it. White people have always been able to get away with a little more than anybody else.
So you think they stayed more in the closet?
So the African Americans were staying more within their own communities. I mean, look at voodoo practitioners today. You have African Americans.
Well, now they're starting to argue that white people can't do it.
Caucasians, and you say, but where's the meld? And no, it's religion. You're worshiping deities, you're worshiping God, you're worshiping whatever entities they are. The lower the spirits, they're everywhere. And they're for us to commune with. You can commune with them and use the word I'm worshiping them, or you can just say, I just want to experience you for a while.
Honoring them too.
Yeah.
Well, they reach out. That's as I said, they all woke me up. I wasn't looking. From when I was a kid, the spirits woke me up, and I had to know why. What status did Marie Laveau have in the 1970s occult in New Orleans?
Oh, that's very interesting. A very powerful status.
Good.
My
she didn't
group,
wane and come back.
We were going to St. Louis #1,
right,
and putting little hex marks, and we gave her honor and deference. We were visiting long before the tourists decided to go there.
The Catholics are saying it was always only the tourists that did that.
That's
been going on since she died.
No, we were there in the early 70s when I was
60s, yeah, with kids,
still relatively young, in my young 20s, and we were not worshiping her, but we were very apprised of her wisdom, and we venerated what she did in her life. She was a very powerful woman as a woman. I mean, living when she lived, before the Civil War, and just moving through society as easily as she did, and
accomplishing so much. Very. And her mother before her owned and built this house, a freed slave. So she came from very strong matriarchal
and
roots.
the house that
full spots.
her grandfather built, it's still over there at the bend of Dolphin and Carolyn.
That was her father.
That was the father, yes.
Yeah. Father. He had a store there.
He put a beautiful plaque on it honoring Marie Laveau's birth family, her father, the grandfather, that these were free people of color who just moved through New Orleans society, high and low, and what they did benefited everybody in the city.
Oh yeah, she was political for all rights, not just one thing or another. Women's rights, political rights, racial rights.
She had knowledge. She had spiritual knowledge, and she had political knowledge because she spoke to everybody. And someone would say, "Oh, but can you find out something for me? I need help on something." And she would make sure she would assist people in any way she could. Yeah. And that was the goodness of her heart, which then lived on with all her other legends.
Her spirit is here all through town.
Altruistic. She was very giving.
She's very spiritual. It's very sad that it's so limited to get to her tomb and that you can't put offerings there anymore, or X's. You said hexes instead of X's, so that's interesting. Why did you say that?
X's and hexes.
So Marie Laveau was appreciated as a spirit over the place. I've been told, kind of like patron saint, watcher, folk saint of New Orleans. What was it? Is like if once you were born here, you could never leave, or there were like certain things that were associated with them when I was growing up. Besides going and putting the pennies and the X's on the grave, which was not a tourist thing.
But also what it is with the hexes thing is you asked her for clarity. I'm having an issue. I'm having a problem.
Show me the way.
Something is going on.
Yeah.
Where there's this hex on me. Here, I put it before you.
And they said that some people
Inspiration.
put their ears up to it because she'd answer you. And I was like, I like that. You can't touch it now or get your ear.
Back in those days, it was right there. It was right there.
No, and it was just less than a year ago, but you weren't supposed to touch it as of 3 years ago, but people still did. It's a shame how they try to whitewash history in order to change a rule by pretending it never existed so that you won't want it. When it's written in books and things, they'll still try to blame it on a tourist or tour guides. It's like, no, this was done in books that I've got from the 1800s. And even to other people's tombs before she died, other people like herself.
People would visit the cemetery and venerate her.
Yeah, and not only her, I said she would also go visit cemeteries and venerate others before her.
It was not frowned upon, because she'd say, "Oh, I went to Marie Laveau's tomb." Everyone would go, "Oh, okay."
Yes, and you'd leave her something, right? You give her some rum, some food, some flowers,
peppermint
some candy, whatever. Yeah.
Yes.
It wasn't weird. People think it's just weird. Only flowers. Like, no, not here. You would find food. You would find...
And you pour a little bit of rum out. Yes.
Yeah.
And then, of course, take a swig for yourself.
But yeah, so we have rum right here. We have all the things on her altar, which, by the way, is right behind us here. Now, one thing that seemed to make a big change in New Orleans mysticism and the occult in the 1970s was so many new versions of Cubans coming in with Santeria. That was in the 1970s as they were leaving Cuba.
And they were coming in through the 60s and 70s through Florida to New Orleans, and different religious, expressions were now in the city.
And we didn't have as many of the Yoruba tribe as we did different tribes, Congo, Dahomey, and others in our historic voodoo being brought in. But in the 1970s, when a new flux of Cubans came in, after our dear friend
Castro.
It came over, you know. Then they infiltrated and became heavily inundated into and squashed a little bit more of New Orleans voodoo, which was already in the closet.
Well, yes, when Castro chased all the intellectual people out and he killed religion in Cuba, people came. And New Orleans, the northernmost city of the Caribbean, was home, just like Miami was home.
All my best girlfriends in grammar school were Cuban and Venezuelan and Hispanic in nature. I was used to that here. I never thought much of it, and I remember being around and in and next to their grandmother's altars. That were in their house that had a partial look of Catholicism, but yet no.
You weren't taken aback because you were so used to multi-cultures in this
right,
city.
and same thing
it's
with
not one thing here.
No, and I've already exposed to things in graveyards and spirits direct, but I was best friends with lots of friends from there. So, but did Santeria become so big here? It was then, and from someone who was initiating at that time period said, their intention was to literally take over. They came in and tried to officially initiate everything, take over with that. Onieda Toups also opened some form of Santeria temple. You don't know that part.
Well, don't know that part, but I didn't have any interaction with that part. Mm-hmm. I remember that happening, but that wasn't the part I was in.
Was that after you or before you?
That was a little bit before me.
Before you, okay.
A little bit before me.
So you said you met her like 71, so you think it was the 60s.
Well, I met her in 71, then 72 happened. I kind of went off and did a few other things happened. We have the influx of the Cubans between the 60s and the 70s, and then when Onieda and I actually became more knowledgeable about each other would be 76,
later.
77. Yeah, back to then.
When did she die?
I believe it was 82.
Okay, 82.
If it wasn't 82, then it was 81. It was somewhere right around there.
Okay. Well, I knew that there was a lot of, and Dr. John. Were you friends with Dr. John?
Dr. John, I met Dr. John, I think in 1969, and he was a big part of her original group.
Mm-hmm. I think they were doing some form of hoodoo together, but
in the beginning, they did a lot of it because he was very into religion. He was a very spiritual person, and they're voodoo because he was from the Ninth Ward.
It's a shame he got so into drugs.
But also Gree.
Yes.
Many
he
times.
had a wonderful first show. That particular tour, I saw at the Municipal Auditorium across the way, was one of the most magical things I've ever seen, with the woman with the snake and the glitter when he was in his heyday.
He was a true New Orleanian.
Yeah.
He was a trailblazer of many forms. And we remember him fondly with all sorts of love.
And definitely, he had some of the mystic knowledge that he sang about. It wasn't just the words. He at least tried at one point in his life.
Oh no, that was his point at a period of his life. And a lot of his music is reflecting that. Yeah,
and then he left the area, New York, and then things happened.
Yeah, he traveled around
and as musicians do, there's more drugs and.
Well, they go on and they do what musicians do in so many cases. So.
Yeah, they get their mojo. But he was fantastic, and making you even want to know more about what the songs were, even if you didn't. Though everybody growing up.
Oh, if you
had a little bit
go on
mojo
YouTube and you watch his old videos, they're really very intense.
Oh, yeah, before the videos. I mean, that first show that he did with the Night Tripper show at the auditorium with his dancers and his snakes. I mean, that was spellbinding in the very literal sense of the word, And at the time, I didn't realize at that stage was over the very area where all the voodoo rituals had been held in Congo Square since the 1700s. It was more back under the actual auditorium, not up front.
Congo Square is very important in
yes, and in music. And I think it's intertwined. Why that's so embedded there, it makes me cry that it just sits there, that building. You know,
politics. Everybody trying to hold on to the money, let the building get destroyed, but they want to keep the money.
Well, I don't want it to be
beautiful building. It should have been repaired with the money that FEMA gave.
Well, definitely should not be the new mayor's office.
No.
That was one of the attempts. So he was like, no.
One of the things I've always found curious is they say City Hall is no good. Right across from City Hall, there's an empty square. It's a lot of grass. Yeah. They could be building City Hall right there
or
and just move over and then sell the old one to some developer who wants to make a hotel.
No, well, we can't start talking politics. Let's go back to magic and screw politics. Yeah, but if we are talking about politics, it is very true that though Cuban people like Castro may have said things like, I don't want religion, but it's also true that Cuban people like Castro had a lot of priests in his backyard. Magical, occult, the Congo, the Congo, the Palo, all the other.
I think it was
all priests.
It was political. He got rid of who he could get rid of. The troublemakers at first, people who fled. At first, they weren't stopping them, and then he had a captive audience, you could say. And we had a culture that became much richer.
And we were so intertwined with Cuba. People don't realize that.
Oh, Cuba and New Orleans were one.
I mean, if you look, they were the archdiocese that was officially linked to New Orleans, since we were not linked to anything in this country historically. They were far enough away that we didn't have to
Spain. Spain.
But it was actually Cuba
and New Orleans. And,
because Spain owned that, but that was too far. So Cuba, we were in the archdiocese of Cuba. It's interesting how we have had that connection, and people don't look at us as Latin American, but when we grew up here, we were told we were Latin Catholic. We were Latin this and that.
New Orleans was founded by French and Spanish right off the bat.
But they don't consider that the Latin Catholic.
That French and Spanish was still spoken for decades.
Well, until after the Civil War, when they finally made it illegal. Yeah.
Yes, when they
pushed it. Then it was in that closet.
And they said, no, you can't. So, yes, people didn't mind speaking French on the streets of the city when I was young.
Well,
I remember hearing Spanish in some.
Yeah, it was. You weren't supposed to. I remember growing up, even in my youth, when my grandmother was pushing me a little bit to go learn French, and I was like, no, that's the old ways. No, that's not in. I was, I don't know, taken over by the American thought pattern.
And I particularly remember.
Now I can't believe I said that.
The 300 block of Burgundy, I remember walking, up that way towards Esplanade in the early 70s, and you could just hear the old people in certain sections would just be sitting out on the sidewalk chit-chatting as the elderly do. That's my age group now. And they were all speaking French. They
weren't speaking Sicilian?
No.
Because we were 85% Sicilian up until 1959.
No. That area of Burgundy was African American.
Oh, up closer to
300 block. And they were speaking French.
And the rest
going, well, let's fix it up now, because by that point.
But even in the 60s and 70s, it was a little seedy, and you were told, don't go back over there, don't go over there. Well, the French Quarter's definitely changed, but there's mysticism in the heart, and there's some, you'll hear the stories, or when a tour guide wants to make up a story, it's like, when they fixed the floor, they found a pentacle underneath it. It's like, yeah. And what about the bones that were over there? And the dead baby in the wall over there. I mean, we had such a high mortality rate. Dead bodies are freaking everywhere, in the streets, on the yard, in walls.
And with the yearly plague, the mosquito, the malaria.
And the yellow fever,
anywhere from 6,000 to 9,000 people could die every malaria season.
Every summer,
And that's quite a bit of dry land.
And they still pop up. And some people didn't want to be marked with the plague, or, it must have been, don't listen to this, it must have been really easy to murder people back then. Because you just throw them on a pile of dead people, which they say were on the corners, put them in your backyard, and who's going to think anything but yellow fever, cholera, death, and
now once you got yellow
corner.
fever or cholera, there was no cure. It was very difficult to survive these diseases.
Once you survived it once, though, you were immune. So cholera. Immune. Cholera just killed you. And, just like that. Done.
And they didn't know it was the mosquito bringing in.
It took to the 20th century. Now, maybe Marie Laveau knew. I mean, she had sensible, she would work with them and give them teas and tisanes and sweat them out. And she was an incredible yellow fever nurse. In fact, some people say that it was her miraculous healing that gave her such a sense of awe with people,
you're absolutely right on that. It was her caring of caregivingness that was so important in every level. And when she was ministering to the ill and to the dying,
and to the
she made sure she did everything she could to make them comfortable, and keeping people away from mosquitoes in the first place.
Even though they didn't really know, maybe intuitively she knew. That must have been hard, keeping you away from mosquitoes.
I read once that one of the things people would do would be to close the shutters, close the windows, and stay inside during malaria season.
There's no reason to go out. That's what they always tell us in COVID, right? There's no reason to leave.
That's summertime. Can you imagine being in your house in the summer?
Before air conditioning.
No air conditioning.
Well, she died on the hottest day of the year.
No,
and she had dysentery because of it, or maybe, she was dehydrated. But it was literally at that point in 1881, it was the hottest day of June 15, 1881, was the hottest day of the year. I was in here this June 15, 2023, and it was hot and the air conditioner broke. And I'm like, are you doing this on purpose? Are you letting me know how empathically it felt? Believe me, I know. So I was here on her anniversary death date connecting this year to see if that... Now, you were talking about a friend the other day that you said was a natural medium, and that she was doing research or books at a couple of different places. And even though she wasn't even realizing what she was hearing was spirit, it was information that she got from spirits that set her on a path to write the studies and books that she did that made...
she had no...
so there is
outward, I'm going to go do this. She would go to a particular place where something had happened, and she would have either a visual or an auditory experience that would be so profound, it led her to writing the stories of the people that were there.
I always say that. I have been led to answers. I have been told I've said things that I didn't know why I said them, but I found the answer to them because a spirit was trying to make me take that right turn.
Your eye is open and your ear is open.
And you get pieces of information which then leads you to the full treasure, and that's what I'm trying to do here with psychics, with people born and raised here. I had an architect come, we're going to do ground penetrating radar to see, because this is built over the old foundation, so we're going to do a seance. We're going to do a misa in 2 weeks or so, or whenever I told you that I would love you to come. And
looking forward to that.
And I have my tata and yaya, mama and papa in my Congo tradition coming from Puerto Rico to lead that. And some few friends and psychics that are here to connect. And we're putting all that information together. Plus I have a ton of, I suppose you say oral history, recorded oral history and source information, as well as 35 years of full-time studies on Marie Laveau, plus being a priestess. So all those things, from mystical knowledge, psychic knowledge, getting other people's information. And, other people have fortunately listened to their leads, but, a lot of us are given signs that we just don't hear or see.
One of the really good things about New Orleans, living in New Orleans, growing up here, is that people talk. We talk all the time. Some people say we blab a lot, but this is how you convey the past to the present that then becomes the knowledge that gets passed on again. And you hear what the mamas and the papas would say, and you just chatter to everybody and you pass it on, and it gives you a sense of continuity many other cities do not have. New Orleans is in touch with its past because it's still alive here.
Well, that's true, and it's still talking.
And it's still
I credit a lot to the river and to the swamp magic that's underneath it all.
Oh,
the
yes,
rawness that is here for
swamp.
transforming things, the mud magic, if you will, that people seem to take for granted because we're a city. But our water's just pumped down a little bit. It's not gone. You saw how quick it came back to 80% swamp in Katrina, right? About 5 minutes?
Yes, right.
5 minutes, there we go. And it's under there bubbling. So as far as the occult is concerned in New Orleans, I know it's not your everyday thing like it was in the 70s, and I'm probably doing it more, I guess.
Oh, you've been doing it much more. I've been doing other things the last 40 years.
Well, I did other things in between there too, but mostly the spirituality, spiritualism, voodoo, hoodoo, mysticism, and psychic things have always been around. But I don't know, what's the one thing that you would like to say about the French Quarter's magic in the 70s that's like different than today? I mean, you said there was a lot of occult stores. There's probably more now. I don't know how real they all are or not.
Well, there's so many now. You have to wonder where's the business versus where is the passion.
Most of them aren't from here. It's funny.
No, 50 years ago, it was regional, if not just directly local. It was from people from our area, South Louisiana,
right.
South Mississippi. Same cultural attachments, understanding what went on.
Right.
People just gravitated to New Orleans because this was home. And
you could do things.
And that's the whole thing about
easier.
Mysticism, metaphysics, witchcraft. You have a feeling and your heart needs to open up to the wisdom. And back in those days, people's hearts were opening up to wisdom. Whereas these days, so many people's heart seems to not be opening to wisdom.
Do you think it was more or less backstabbing back then?
All depends on how you're going to look at it. Politics are politics. But I think people were more honest and more upfront with each other than they are now.
That would be good.
People
are just so inundated, like you said, not regional or local people. There's so many more that are moving their businesses here because they think it has the money or the fame of mysticism. So they're coming here trying to tap in on that instead of coming here and being wrapped up in
coming here and
beauty and wisdom,
feeling the power of the city
and wanting to be a part of it.
Yes.
As opposed, I'm going to come
joining the culture,
as opposed to coming in and taking over the culture.
Yeah, and in many instances,
what
that has happened. They're coming in and they're imbuing it with,
my way's better.
And I'm from, no, this is New Orleans. We don't do things that way here. It's slow.
I guess we're a little snobby, but that's if everybody came with the right attitude, we were never that way. It's like, come on in, come on over.
No, it's a very embracing and loving culture.
Normally, it's just gotten a little bitter lately.
When people come with love, they're met with love.
Yeah.
When people come with avaricious intentions, you have to wonder what they ultimately are going to be giving or even leaving behind.
Well, I have found that New Orleans can be a vicious bitch.
Oh,
I don't mean you, me, and the people. I mean she will pick you up, chew you up, and spit you out if you don't.
The river, the swamp, the Gulf. It's just so much power from nature right at our fingertips. We survive hurricanes coming. Horrible heat events, which
we are Malkuth.
Today I think it got to be 104 in our neighborhood.
That was in your thermostat. They said 115 with the heat index.
Oh, the heat index is beyond imaginable.
Yeah, it's the heat. I guess you could take that and use it to transform power, but the heat also makes you not want to do anything.
No. I always say we should erect a statue to whoever invented air conditioning. Thank you, those people.
Yeah, as I told Mom, how did you live here without air conditioning? She said it wasn't, you had the windows and the fans.
People are going to say this of a certain age, it wasn't that hot. It cooled down to the mid-ish 70s way back when.
The French Quarter has been cement for a very long time.
But we have all these patios.
Mm-hmm. We always have, but some of them had more grass.
And a lot of them have a lot of grass.
And dead bodies.
And a lot of cracks.
Mm-hmm.
This is later technology, late 1800s technology.
But for the 1700s, before that,
I think by the time the late 1800s, they had figured out how to drain a certain amount of the swamps, and it made
yeah.
the soil a little more stable.
This had to be filled in, they say, at the 1800s, right when they built this. It was filled up 2 feet because it flooded a lot of this part of the quarter. So this was raised 2 feet. So we had to go down 2 feet below that to see, and there was indeed, another brick patio and such under there. So that, and it was at the end of the 1800s, 1890, that they started hydraulics to pump, which was why we're now below sea level. Do you know that we weren't below sea level at all? For 1898?
No, not the French Quarter.
No, none of the city.
Oh, the old
Zero.
city, yes. Front, at one time, this is before it was all drained off, it was just called the Great Cypress Swamp.
Well, I'm sure
up to Lake Pontchartrain.
I'm sure it was. And did you know that City Park Avenue was the Mississippi Gulf Coast 1,500 years ago?
Yeah,
so that's what I mean. So we're still a water city. We have 5 more miles of above ground canals today, more than Venice does. Today, not counting the hundreds of miles below our city that we drive over. And that is a source of magic, mysticism, and the spirit highway.
Oh, water is very, very powerful.
And we're in a direct ley line with Cairo, Egypt. We're 90-30 here, 30-30 there. We're also lined up to the Himalayas. We are at an incredible ley line.
Us in Lhasa, Tibet,
and that. And the other side,
yes.
Giza. I mean, we are, and people don't look at us as such an old, important site. We are, as I mentioned real quickly and briefly, we are Malkuth.
Well,
and that is keeping.
We were created by the river.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I mean, I'm what they call a Mama Isi, which is also a priestess of the river. So I do a lot of work, but because of the tourism and stuff, a lot of times the work I might do is at the old river, which is Vayuchana.
And the river would do this and go back and forth, and the silt came and
they built us up.
Said once Bienville and his group got here and they decided we better put a few little levees on, they trapped the Mississippi where it is, because otherwise it still wants to meander.
Oh, it does. It's more than what he could have done, or else we'd have been swallowed back up a long time ago. No, that's why we have to honor her, even if you don't believe in such things. She's got the power, the financial power, and the physical power to destroy, creation, destruction. Like all good magicians and occultists, the river is the mother here in New Orleans and must be saluted.
The 3rd greatest river in the world. Only the Nile and the Amazon beat her.
Well, we'll just say that we're in the triangle. We're in the trinity of we're in the trinity of the rivers, and she's very much a watchful mother and stern at times if you mess with her too much, But I think that's a lot of the power here, and voodoo in New Orleans will always be interesting. It always had a little bit of flavor of your European occult. It had some of the what you were telling me. It had a lot of European witchcraft and folk magic, and of course the structure of Catholicism. But what I didn't really pay attention to, which you are saying was so important in the 1970s, was that the Jewish community's Cabala training and teaching seemed to share in the mysticism.
Oh, you could find Kabbalists all over the city.
You can't now. You can't now.
No.
Or are they being in a closet somewhere?
No, times have changed. It was more open.
And would they come
you could go
to rituals?
Bookstores and say, oh,
okay.
What's a book on the Kabbalah? Okay, you need this. And they say, oh, and you should get this book and you should get that book.
So they weren't saying it was a closed practice and don't ask us questions?
No.
Well, now you
people
can
in many different groups.
Well, you can see that there was some Kabbalistic influences in Onieda Toups' book that she wrote.
Oh, definitely.
Yeah. But, and of course, also in Voodoo, maybe a little bit here, but more so maybe in Haiti, they would use and abuse, depending on your perspective, a lot of the structure of the Masonic rituals.
The foundation of the country.
Yeah. So the ritual structures, the blocking, the movement, that made its way in. So it's much to the chagrin of the Freemasons that that's true, but it's definitely true for some of the African rituals, especially Haitian ones. Did you find that there was a lot of Masonic over or undertones here in the
Masons
1970s?
have always been very quiet.
They're quiet here, okay.
They don't like anybody to know about them. They keep their vow of secrecy very, very well.
Yeah, they should. Yeah.
But all you have to do is look at the dollar bill, and it's just got Masonic written all over it, from the eye to the triangle, the basis of our society, the founding fathers.
But even in New Orleans, even though when we first got here, it wasn't Catholics weren't anti-Mason.
Not at that time, no.
Just a little bit later, but we didn't listen to what they had to say.
No, we didn't listen to what a lot of people said.
He was like, that's what they do in France and Italy, not here. But so you did not find Masonic structures weaving in with witchcraft and occult. That's good to know. But you did find that the Kabbalists were very open.
Oh, the Kabbalah, yes. You could go to a number of different organizations, and people would be talking about their readings in the Kabbalah and what they're studying and how it was spiritually affecting them. But I think Onieda...
But they weren't judging the witchcraft or the occult.
And Onieda looked at wisdom as, okay, I'm going to take it and make it a part of me. She did not block anything out. She was very open to knowledge.
Well, I'm sure she was, and I'm like that too, but just now everybody's coming back at you and, I'm not allowed to read about that because I wasn't born here, and I'm not allowed to read that because I was born Jewish. I mean, people are asking, I know I'm not supposed to look at what this is. It's like they teach it in classes in college. I said, you cannot not know what is going on in the world. Doesn't mean you have to steal it or appropriate it. I mean, I was asked, and without me asking, to initiate and to be brought in, There's a lot of reasons that people are initiated. But now they're really, really coming down on people that have any Kabbalah aspects in their magic. The people that are on the other end are like, well, I'm not the one that gave it away. And that was done 175 years ago. It's a big fight right now.
No, it's not the type of thing to ever shy away from. You have the ability to learn and to express, and that's always to your benefit.
I believe that. It's just, what about trade?
It's a different wisdom, and I want to take it, make it a part of me, and make me wiser.
And I want to share what I have with you.
And why should I then limit myself and not be able then to pass on something that I understand?
I said, if it's already been done also for hundreds of years by your forebears, it's too late to go around and pull the plug now.
No.
In
so many ways.
It doesn't stop you from gaining everything you always wanted to gain, because wisdom doesn't diminish because more people have it. Would you say
that modern culture has become too much of a whiny group of people?
Well, I mean...
you shouldn't be doing this, you shouldn't be doing that. Differently from how it was, say, 50 years ago, when they said, no, because this religious dogma cannot cross and go with that religious dogma. Well, those are the dogmas that would do that. But then the people who are the spiritualists, they all say, ooh, let's talk to each other and find out what we know. And we're going to get together and make ourselves stronger as a person and as a group.
I frowned upon the major religions because of that factor of saying, no, you can't do this and no, you can't do that. Going to, if you want to call them alternative religions and mysticism, you went there because you thought of a oneness and acceptance and that, yes, you would grow and your wisdom would continue. But now they're like attacking you for it, big time, me, because I'm in the limelight. I didn't hide in the shadows.
They did. To attack now. They just attack.
Yeah.
And in so many ways that you have to
say. It's like I devoted half my life to preserving this and working with it and taking up for a culture, because this is one of my points I'm going to get to that I know you have something to say. Is because one, it's an underdog religion. Two is because it accepted all religions are so like God. They didn't tell you had to only be this or that, like the Catholics said, you can't be friends with the Protestant, and the Protestants said you can't be friends with a Jew who Judean, like all that nonsense that I didn't like. I thought this was all one, but now, I don't know. Now there are a lot of people in their own culture that I would talk to about voodoo and New Orleans voodoo and mysticism, who were black, were just really believing, oh, no, I know that my culture was from the devil. It's like, why? Why do you know that? Why do you think that? This is just racist bullshit that the man put on your own culture. I mean, I took up for that so
Their
much.
religion today is now trying to block the innate wisdom of their ancestors.
But the past 3-4 years, now they're claiming it back and getting mad at white people for doing it. But now they're reclaiming it back, which I'm exceedingly happy for. I was on this Catholic talk show once with a whole bunch of people. There was a black Baptist minister, 2 weird ladies from the Sisters of the Innocent Blood, a Catholic priest, me, and at my time, my spiritual mother and godmother, previous Queen Margaret, and I don't know, some person of the show, and everybody was going around saying something. They were upset because this new thing known as the Voodoo Fest was coming, the music fest. And like, oh, we're afraid that, that New Orleans will be known for voodoo. I'm like,
what do you mean now? New Orleans is going to be known for voodoo?
New Orleans is already been known for voodoo. And she's like, yeah, but now they might take over.
For the last 200 and some odd years.
Yeah, I was like, wait a minute, what are you talking about? And so everybody had something to say, and the black minister says, I thank God for the slave boats every day, because they took my people away from the devil. And I'm just like, the next person, Sisters of the Holy Blood, said, I was in Africa. These were white women. We were working with the missionaries in the African tribes, and the African tribal doctor was doing an exorcism on the boy that was possessed. So, he did his exorcism, and then it was our turn, and we would do our exorcism. And we got the boy, and the boy's getting bigger and bigger and bigger, and he's smaller and smaller and smaller. Then he gets bigger and bigger and bigger, and smaller and smaller and smaller. And he goes, and finally we got the devils out. I'm like, yeah, all right.
This is kind of the strangest thing for a minister to say.
Well, these are the Sisters of the Innocent Blood. The minister was the black minister
but that's what I mean.
The slave boats should be there. And then the next person talks about something else and finally gets to me is, excuse me, I want to comment on what he said. It's like, what the hell? What are you talking about? Do you think God needed slave boats to save people? You're just, what the hell are you doing? No, none of the other people, black or white, would say a word. What the hell are you saying that for?
That is the craziest, dumbest thing to say.
I was just like jaw dropped.
God would create slavery in order to give you some kind of wisdom? I don't think so.
Yeah. It's like, that's human greed. That's not,
Human greed, exactly.
But I just couldn't believe no one else would be saying anything. And there was a little audience, and they'd be there with their rosaries. Looking, and I'm like, and I said the priest whispers to me, he goes, I wish they wouldn't do that. I said, I wish you'd say something. Instead of whispering to me, like, stop them. Say something. But, that's the thing. So, my last question, and this question is maybe for this, but it's for a separate whole video that I'm going to do, and it'll be fun. Who is the devil?
Oh, goodness. Who is the devil?
Or who is the devil to you? What is the devil? How does the devil play into all of this? Who, what, when, and where is he, and why is he a part of all of this?
I would like to say that just simply, the devil is ignorance.
And we got a lot of that.
And we have a lot of that.
Around that. And
absolutely. All the evil things that are done in the world are done out of ignorance and greed,
and fear,
aberration, fear. That's all ignorance. I'm going to take what you have. You're so ignorant you don't realize that you have it already.
You can go get your own. Yeah,
just
turn over
yourself. There. You don't need to do like trying to slit my throat.
And just because you think that magically or physically you're going to take something from someone else, that doesn't mean that your life will be better or everything out there will now come to you because you eliminate one competitor.
Oh, and especially metaphysically.
Oh, God, I hate them all with that. I've seen people do stupid little spells just because you're more known than them. That is not how it works.
No. You could say that, oh, sure, there are deities that may personify certain aspects of humanity, but it's just personifying aspects of humanity. All the unpleasant things that happen here are from us. All the unpleasant thoughts and wishes can be manifest.
Absolutely.
And made real.
And come and bite you.
That comes from us. And then
thought forms are just more elaborate thought forms, larvae.
And then according to karma, you produce this evil which came from you. At some point, the evil will go back to you. And some people become magnets for it. And then they just become so unpleasant. Mm-hmm. Why do you walk into a room and somebody just, makes you go, oh, I don't like that person.
Right.
Or why do you walk in the room and you go, oh, that's one of the nicest people I ever met, and you don't know them.
Yes, their persona. No, the devil gets so much credit over the years, like the poor, Baptist minister said his entire people were saved, and I believe that he really believed that.
I guess they do, but that is blaming somebody else for their shortcomings, their failures.
And the devil, all of a sudden, it was, you didn't go to the crossroads to talk to Papa LaBa, you went there to sell your soul to the devil. The devil just got really intertwined into mysticism early 20th century, especially.
Philosophically, you can look at all the sins of the world as being markers for you to learn how to be a better being.
Well, one would hope.
And if you do it all, you are a better being. But does that mean there's some other being out there saying that, oh, gee, I'm not all that happy, I'm just going to go rob that person? Oh, I'm really unhappy, I'm going to kill that person. No, that's inside of you.
It doesn't make you happier.
No,
it does not make the
doesn't.
world better. It does, it just spirals into the same problem. I feel greatly for the oppressed people in the world that are still oppressed and those that were oppressed historically, but we can only live the best we can in the now and not manifest or transform that energy.
Manifest our future with the greatest positive nature that we have. And you grow that every moment you're alive and you're having good and beneficial thoughts and actions.
And there's so many opportunities right now that weren't even around 30 years ago for creation and new jobs. I mean, look at all the new types of things that people have come up with recently to make whole new jobs. I mean, some of them I don't agree with, but they're finding new ways instead of the only 9 to 5 kind of thing.
Oh, and evolution.
Yeah, one would hope it's evolution and not devolution.
No.
And that would lead our friend to say goodbye to our friend the devil, because ignorance would definitely keep you down.
And you're right, the devil or demonology, evil if you will, that's an entire conversation unto
yes,
itself.
it's a totally different thing. One I want to talk about with who the devil, I have a friend that's a Satanist, I want his opinion. I'll talk to one of those idiots with the signs.
Now, Satanists, I would say, that's a different viewpoint than
demonology is very popular right
than
now,
that minister who was talking about the devil.
Absolutely. But you got to compare those things.
Yes.
Why did that get overlaid on top of the belief of voodoo? Mainly because of
these are different thought processes.
Yeah. But the devil gets around in a lot of ways, and demonology and ceremonial magic and that kind of stuff is becoming very popular again from people that aren't really trained, and I think that is the danger, to just jump into something very quickly.
You never can tell what their mind might create and put out there.
Yeah.
People may not understand it, but they just may have a knack for sympathetic magic. And when they have negative thoughts, or they think they're worshiping an evil spirit, what did they just let loose in the universe?
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, I don't think demons are out to get you necessarily. I mean, they have to be tasked and pointed, I believe. And, except for the demons of diseases and stuff like that. Parasites, however, I think they're all over the place.
Now that's a whole lexicon of different
parasites versus
different
demons
thoughts.
Versus bottom feeders. We are not alone. Let's just leave it at
no,
that.
versus the psychic experiences you have where you meet all these different beings on different levels of consciousness and how they relate to you and what emanates from you ultimately to realize what those beings or those thoughts are.
Well, and quite a life learning lesson with a 3-year battle or program of teaching after Katrina, what was unleashed here, because that wasn't a pretty sight. I'm not talking about ghosts or, there was something very archaic that was very hungry. And we were the food.
Well, there was a lot of death.
It was something that was unleashed from a long time ago.
People were depressed.
Primordial. Yes. It fed on the depression and the anger and the confusion. And it was, I never have walked down the street looking over my shoulder all the time as I did that. And I wasn't afraid of the crime. Maybe. I mean, I was aware, but, it was something much...
Oh, certainly. A lot of times you felt something just pushing on you.
It was just very, and I was battling it quite a lot to try to transform it, but it's hard when an entire city is depressed and negative. There's no light, there's no laughter, there's no children, there's no place to turn because it was just so bad.
and these feelings were coming out of everybody because of the lack of joy in their life.
Yeah, it's like I said, you couldn't go to the corner bar and have a shot and talk to your friend.
There was no corner bar anymore.
There might have been a corner bar, but you'd hear a story worse than your own, and there'd be other problems going on.
Very few places opened up.
Yeah, it was a very tiny town, very. Well, we will see you again at the Misa. Do you have any parting words to our guests out there if they're thinking about going into a structure and a cult, or just
the main thing is
yourself?
You have to realize many people have knowledge to share. Ask and then you listen.
There are certain secrets that can't be shared, initiation secrets.
But then that's how you grow to get to those secrets.
Then you have to go through the initiations and go through the things and be one. Well, good luck to you and to all of our audience. And Yoyali Mamzelle Marie, thank you for being with us. May we have some of the knowledge and grace that you did in your life, because she lived through a very hard time.
Very hard time.
Plagues, times of civil war. I mean, but yet
difficult
she still came
days,
up on top.
1800s.
Yeah. This is right here. So may I write on you and what was going on in New Orleans with accuracy, and listen well. See you later.
Good night.
Bye. Thank you for joining us tonight at Bloody Mary New Orleans on YouTube. Join us in person when you're in New Orleans. Come to the museum, Haunted Museum at 828 North Rampart, and Voodoo Shop, or you could book a reading, a seance, a ghost hunt, a tour, and so much more. See ya soon.
Hi, my name is Edwin. I'm a student of the occult, and for over 50 years, a tarot reader. You may consult me at the Haunted Museum in New Orleans.